The 7th century marriage between Prophet Muhammad and Aisha faces intense scrutiny today. Critics use this domestic partnership to challenge the ethical foundation of Islam. Analyzing this requires diagnosing the central error driving these criticisms. In historical sociology, this cognitive distortion is called presentism. Presentism anachronistically forces 21st century secular values and statutory laws onto historical figures who operated under entirely different paradigms. This lens treats the current conception of childhood, a protected period of dependency lasting nearly 2 decades, as a biological constant of human history. In reality, modern childhood and strict statutory ages of consent are recent sociological outcomes of industrialization and the rise of the centralized modern state. Evaluating a 7th century reality through the lens of modern Western legislation strips historical events of their authentic context. It replaces objective analysis with a framework that historical actors could not have anticipated or followed. Before the Industrial Revolution, high mortality rates and the demands of agrarian labor made early marriage a practical necessity for communal survival. Industrialization shifted these requirements by mandating formal education and delaying the entry of young people into the adult workforce, effectively creating the period we now call adolescence. To see how recently these statutory limits shifted, we only have to look back at the 19th century United States. In 1880, legal marriage requirements varied significantly. The minimum age for marriage was set at 10 years old in California. In Delaware, that minimum was legally established at 7 years old. Because Western statutory limits shifted so significantly recently, they are mismatched tools for analyzing the realities of the 7th century. Pre-modern societies operated under severe demographic constraints, including rampant infant mortality and the harsh demands of tribal survival. Sustaining a population under these conditions required marriages that tracked the biological onset of puberty. This matrix shows that early marriage was a universal baseline. In the Roman Empire, the legal minimum age of marriage for females was 12 years. The Jewish halakhic tradition defined legal adulthood and independence at 12 and a half. Historical records show the marriage of female minors was a legally sanctioned practice utilized to secure familial stability during eras of extreme poverty. Medieval Christianity followed similar protocols. Canon law, which governed marital affairs for centuries, officially set the minimum age of consent for girls at 12 years. Roman law legally recognized betrothals as early as age 7. These standards were designed to maintain the empire's demographic and military strength through high birth rates. This standard was used for strategic royal alliances and property consolidation across Europe. Marrying at the onset of physical puberty was a standard practice across all major civilizations prior to the modern era. While some Western laws lack biological prerequisites, Islamic jurisprudence forbids the consummation of marriage without both physiological and psychological maturity. The first mandatory threshold is bulugh, marking the physical onset of puberty and reproductive capacity. This must be paired with rushd, signifying social maturity and sound judgment. Only when both thresholds are met is a person a legal adult. The 3-year gap between Aisha's marriage contract and its consummation functioned as a required waiting period to ensure she crossed the threshold of bulugh. Biological research suggests high-temperature environments and caloric stress accelerate physical maturation. This evolutionary adaptation in harsh environments ensures genetic survival. The behavior of the Prophet's fiercest enemies, the pagan Quraysh, provides a second layer of historical evidence regarding these norms. The Quraysh scrutinized his life for any vulnerability to exploit, hurling accusations of madness and sorcery, yet their records contain no criticism of the age of his bride. Their absolute silence indicates that the union was an unremarkable, accepted norm of the 7th century environment. Modern narratives often portray Aisha as a subjugated figure, a perspective that requires ignoring her recorded history. In the prophetic household, she was recognized for her intellectual capacity and lived in a dynamic characterized by romantic love and mutual respect. The marriage placed a student in the household at the start of her intellectual development, creating a mechanism to preserve the Prophet's private practices for future generations. Aisha lived for over 4 decades after the Prophet's passing, a period she spent as a leading authority in the Medinan school of jurisprudence. She utilized her memory to transmit over 2,210 narrations that define the private sunnah and ritual law for the Muslim community. She actively peer-reviewed other scholars, frequently overturning the legal rulings of senior male companions and caliphs when they conflicted with her understanding of prophetic practice. Her influence was also geopolitical. She commanded the loyalty of thousands of veteran warriors and led a major campaign following the death of Caliph Uthman. Applying transient Western morals to this event fails to account for the biological and social standards of antiquity. When viewed in context, the marriage followed the universal norms of its time and produced a scholar whose work shaped the legal foundations of a global civilization.